Welcome to, or welcome back to We Are Wool People. My name is Ysolda, and on this channel we talk about knitting. So I haven't been around for a little while, but I have been doing a lot of knitting, and I've got a few finished objects to show you, a couple of new cast-ons, one being a dirty Q jumper, and then at the end I think I'll talk a little bit about my plans. And today is Worldwide Knit in Public Day. So this afternoon when I'm finished filming here, I'm heading off to my local yarn store where we're going to knit in the street for a little while. We're going to sit outside on some chairs out the front of the shop and knit in the street for a little while, and then we're heading down to a local pub, possibly for a meal and a bit of knitting in public. So that should be fun. I've been to a few yarn shops and shows in the last couple of weeks. Last weekend I went to Melbourne and I visited Sunspun. It was very cold down there, and I visited Sunspun and I bought some beautiful yarn for one of the projects that I had on my autumn-winter fantasy knits wish list. And I liked it so much that I cast on and have made a bit of progress on that. So let's start, first things first, with what I'm wearing. This is my... Oh, I have to show you something first. Can you see this? Let me just lift it up. Oh, shush. This here is not mine. It actually belongs to next door. She is going, my neighbour next door is going on a holiday for 3 weeks, and I'm looking after her 2 dogs, plus my dog. That's 3 dogs for 3 weeks. I was thinking. Anyway, this thing here, I've only had it since last night and I've nearly killed it. I just fished it out of the pool. So it's had a blow dry, and I'm giving it a really nice soothing cuddle so that it doesn't die of fright. Actually, look, if you could see what's down here, I'll take a photo and I'll show you. This is what's happening down here. Look, I've got 3 dogs laying on the ground, just looking up at me and making noise. Anyway, can you just, Chiquita, can you just move? Just sit there for a minute so I can show them these people my jumper. Right, so this is the Oxford sweater by Fabel knits, and if you've been here before you'll know that I bought this yarn bare. I bought it undyed, and I dyed it this lovely red colour and knitted the jumper. So let me show it to you. It's completely finished. It has got these, as you can see, these huge, really dramatic sleeves. And it's certainly not an everyday knit to wear, given the massive dramatic sleeves that it's got. And because the yarn is it's quite a dense yarn, it's knitted at quite a dense gauge, which I'll show you up close. You can kind of see. It's the sleeves stick out. Really, look, I can't sit down, look. I can't sit down because of that. You two, move. Right. Oh my God. Okay, so it's got a really dense gauge, and because of that, and there's quite a lot of structure to the composition of the yarn. It's cotton, wool, alpaca, I think, those 3 fibres together, and it's got quite a lot of structure to the yarn, and so the shoulders actually stay really, it's got that real exaggerated massive leg of mutton sleeve shaping in it. I do like it, but it's very different for me, and it's very kind of out there for me. When I tried it on and showed my daughter, she actually laughed and said, "Oh, that's funny, Mum. You look like Europapa, Europapa." And I was like, what are you talking about? But if you know, you know. It's from the Eurovision Song Contest, and I'll put a picture up and you can see that it was not a compliment. Anyway, I finished it, and today is Worldwide Knit in Public Day, as I just mentioned, and I'm heading out to knit in public later. I don't know whether I'm going to wear this or not. Because this is pretty out there. Having said that, it is Worldwide Knit in Public Day, and I guess the idea is to draw attention to knitting and knitting in public, so maybe I will wear it. I don't know. The jury's out. I haven't decided. I did wear it though to Sunspun last weekend, and the person that was working in the shop, she was very, very helpful for me, and she complimented me on my jumper. That's probably what she does for a living, but still, I fell for it. I was very pleased to have the person at Sunspun notice my nice jumper. Barry's tea. You're welcome. If you remember, one of the knits that is on my Fantasy 4 knits wish list was the Levitate wrap by My Favourite Things. I've never knitted anything from My Favourite Things before, but I really wanted this Levitate wrap. And I remember I looked at the yarn that was suggested for it, which is Ysolda yarn soft, which used to be called Eco Soft, and now it's just called soft because it comes in a range of commercially dyed colours. It used to be Eco Soft because it was only the colour of the alpacas, but now it comes in, they're dyeing it now, so they changed the name to just soft. So it's Ysolda Soft and Ysolda Trio 1, which is actually a lace weight cellulose-based fibre. And it's a very unusual yarn combination, and I was originally thinking, oh well, I'll just buy a merino or a tweedy yarn and make it out of a substitute yarn. And when I went to Sunspun, my goal for going in there was to have a look at the suggested yarn for this project and try and work out whether it would be appropriate just to use a merino 8-ply or a plain yarn as a substitute. But let me show you these two actual yarns. Sorry. Let me show you these two yarns. So the first one is the Ysolda Soft. Now it's a blown yarn, so it has a like a net core, and the fibres are kind of blown into it and they all wrapped around it, giving it a texture like this. Now I think that if I don't know if you've seen it, this yarn is not commonly found in ordinary yarn stores in Australia. It's an unusual yarn, and being a European yarn, we don't tend to find them in sort of run-of-the-mill yarn stores. Obviously high-end stores like Sunspun, for example, and the Little Wool store in Queensland, which is a British line store, have yarns like this, but you know, you're not going to find it in your local Dolly Dingle's wool shop. But what it is similar to is it's similar to, what's it called? I had it right on the tip of my tongue a minute ago and now I've forgotten. No, it's gone. It's similar to, I feel quite sure that there's 543 projects. I feel quite sure that somebody has made one. It's very similar to Drops Air, but that's another yarn that you're never going to get in Australia unless you... Cotton Merino shops. Yarns, you plonker. Hello, I've remembered. Okay, so it's actually very similar to Katia Cotton Merino. So that's more available, I think, in yarn stores in Australia. And my recommendation would be that it would be a good substitute. But when I went to Sunspun, I looked at this yarn and I thought, because of the actual airiness of it and the gauge of it and also the construction, that it would be quite difficult. You'd get a completely different result from what the plan is if you substituted a yarn. So I bought the real thing, and it's quite rare for me to do that, but I did. And it's held with, now this is I think this is interesting. So this is the main yarn, right, okay, this fluffy blown yarn, and it's actually held with a strand of linen cotton lyocell Trio 1, which is actually, you're not going to see that, but it's a lace weight yarn. Now, I was wondering what that is bringing to the party, but what I think now, I'm making a mess there, I think is that it's in there for structure. because I suspect, and I'm just thinking here, I suspect that when that gets wet, that is going to grow. And I think that if you hold this with it, then this being cotton, linen, that's going to shrink when it's wet, and that's going to grow when it's wet. So presumably the two of those together are going to maintain their size after blocking as well as before, and presumably during wear as well. Anyway, the Levitate wrap is what I bought this yarn for. And the Levitate wrap, because I was so excited, was what I cast on for immediately. So today's Saturday, and I bought this yarn last Saturday morning, around lunchtime, and I've cast on and made a fair bit of progress on my Levitate wrap, as you can see. Let me scoot on up, as long as I don't disturb the baby here. I'm going to scoot on up. So the Levitate wrap starts across the back, yes, and knit from the back down, and then you pick up across the back seams and knit forwards for each side, and you increase at quite a steep rate down the fronts so that you create what is going to be the wrap. Got it? Easy. It's a drop shoulder. The sleeves are picked up in the round and knitted downwards subsequently. I think that the seam across the back, the pattern doesn't have a photo, but I don't think that the seam across the back is meant to sit at the top of your shoulder. I think it's actually meant to sit further back, because in the pattern it deliberately has the front of the armhole longer than the back of the armhole, indicating that if that's the center, then you're probably meant to wear it with the back shoulder a bit lower down. I'm just looking at this and it's bothering me. I think this armhole here, this armhole depth here at the back might be too short for the front. I don't know. That's worrying me. I was very gung-ho. I thought I was really killing it until just then. I did do a gauge swatch and I am on gauge, so I might block it and see how I go, because I'm actually up to the part. This is literally only a week's knitting. It didn't take very long at all, and I'm up to the part where I'm about to pick up all the way around the edge here, around the neck and the two fronts, which you do in one go, and make the front band and the ribbon. There's a lot of projects on Ravelry that have got some really good tips on how to do that. On the pattern that you buy, this is the only picture of the entire thing in the whole pattern. Nothing, no picture of the back, no close-up of the ties, nothing. I've never knitted anything from my favourite things before, so I'm not familiar with the way that she or he writes patterns. It's a she. But this pattern, not that great. It's alright. This part was the easy part. The picking up part and knitting the ribbon, that's where the technical aspects of it come in. And I think that's probably been a difficult pattern to describe, because can you two not fly? Because what they want you to do is they want you to pick up all the way across, up the neck, across the back, and down. And I believe that you then provisionally cast on some stitches for the bottom band, knit around, absorbing your live stitches from the bottom of the jumper all the way around, and then make the ribbon long, end it off, and then pick up your provisional cast on stitches from here and make the ribbon long again so that you've got 2 ribbon sides. Does that make sense? You should put, I haven't seen it, I don't know if it's there, but you should probably, if you're going to make a proper ballet wrap, you should probably put a little hole here so that you can pull the ribbon from the strap, you know, the tie, from under through the jumper and then around and tie it off. I'm going to investigate that. I might actually put one of those in if there isn't one. Bit to think about there. First of all, is your back arm side depth long enough, Ailsa? Secondly, what are you going to do about those long ribbons? I don't know. That's a WIP. Second WIP. I talked about my next project being yarn driven in my last episode, and I said that it was because I had this yarn, this beautiful yarn, which was this Coast, Holstgarn Coast, in this lovely silver colour. And held with that I was holding the Holstgarn Titicaca, which is the lace weight alpaca. And I swatched on those together, and I did quite like the fabric that I swatched with. I swatched on 1, 2, 3 three different sized needles, starting probably, I'd say, from my guess, I probably would have started with a 375, a 275, and then gone up to a 3 and a 325. So I was really pleased with that and buoyed by that success. I then cast on for a dirty Q jumper of a knit called Joanna Ang's RibWave cardigan pullover. And I got this far, and then I didn't like it. I thought that it was too open, and I thought that the rib that goes down the front of the pullover in these yarns was a bit loose and a bit wonky, and I was also not really liking how the waved cable was coming out down the edges of the V. And so I abandoned it. And it's funny because when I just picked it up earlier to have a look at it before I started filming, I actually like it now. The other thing about it is that because I didn't really measure the swatch too well, is that it's definitely probably going to be a bit small. But I really did like this pattern. And so I cast it on properly using a more appropriate size needle in that beautiful Great Southern Yarns, yes, soft rolling skin merino in the colour Euconbene from Grumpy Ginger that I bought at the Canberra Yarn Show. And when I felt it in the skein, I remember saying that's some of the softest merino I've ever touched in the skein, and knitting it up, oh my lord, it is beautiful. I'm dead set. It's really, really gorgeous, and thoroughly recommend anyone in Australia to go and get some. It's beautiful if you're in the market for some merino yarn. Right, so I have come this far. So I've finished the yoke, and I am now just heading plain sailing down and I've joined, and my arm size is again a bit too short. I get very eager to join in the round and start knitting down, and I really should probably work out how long my arm size need to be. But it's a drop shoulder, so it should be all right. I haven't got a really big arm. But I got this far, and I have put myself in a muddle. And so it's in the naughty corner because, let me show you. Right. So down the back, what you have to do is you are running a cable, a really easy wrap cable down the side, and then this wave cable, which is just a two-stitcher. Two stitches next to each other. You're running this cable wave with it. But I have lost track of what row number I'm up to. And therefore my cable wave is getting a bit wonky. It's not right. See, this one's a bit shorter than these ones. This one is dodgy and this one is dodgy. So I feel like I might have to go back a fair way to find a row that I know is correct, identify the row number, and then knit forward from there. It's a bit of a challenge. So I digress here a little bit because it was really worrying me when I looked at this jumper that the arm side was too short in the back, long in the front, and that in fact the whole thing was going to be a disaster. But let me just show you. I think it's okay. So I was measuring, and I did get gauge, and I was measuring as I went along, but I just lost all my confidence then while I was talking. So here we go. It is the back isn't sitting directly on the shoulders, but it does drop down. If that's what it's supposed to do, then that's what it's doing, and if it's not what it's supposed to do, it still looks all right. You can see that the increases start here. It's quite short. I could potentially make it a little bit longer, but I do think it's also going to grow a bit with blocking. If I just pull this down like that, it's going to grow a bit with blocking, and the bottom band is 11 stitches, and I might make mine a bit thicker, a bit longer, because it seems short because of the depth of the V, but that's my natural waist, and you can see from the back that it's quite long in the back. It's not too bad. So I think it's going to be all right. Pressing on. I'll pop that back down there like that. Am I going to put my red jumper back on? I don't know. No, maybe I won't. I think it's funny, I go to all this trouble to get dressed to film these things, and then I end up spending half of them wearing a half knitted item around my neck, shoulders. Oh God, dog, get away. I'm going to put this jumper back on. Right, so I also had a couple of trips in the car, and I just mentioned that I had put this Joanna Ang RibWave jumper that is so soft in the naughty corner because I've gotten in a muddle and I don't know what row number I'm up to. So I wanted to make something that was going to be a little bit less taxing. And there's this pattern that every man and his dog's made that I hadn't made one, and I have got plenty of yarn that's appropriate to make this thing. You could make this thing with any yarn. And what it is, and so I made one just to see what it was like, since thousands of people have made one. And it is a Musselburgh hat. Musselburgh hat. Musselburgh. I live near a place called Helensburgh, and it's spelt similar to Musselburgh, so let's call it Musselburgh. So you know, everybody knows this pattern. It's a Ysolda teague pattern. You knit a peanut. You then halve the peanut and put one end of the peanut into the other end of the peanut. Block it over a balloon or something like that, and end up with a hat, like a wee willy winky hat kind of, and it's double, so it's warm, and when you fold the brim up, the folded brim is quadruple, so it's a very warm brim, and it uses your yarn, and it's easy to knit, and all in all, it's I think the featurelessness of it is what makes it such an appealing pattern. Musselburgh Hat, knitted in a very old skein of hedgehog fibres sock yarn. I believe it's their sock yarn that's got the nylon in it, and it's a colour called Nougat, which descriptively enough looks like nougat with bits of dried fruit and angelica and whatnot in it. Can you see all those little speckles of colour? They're nice, aren't they? Pink ones and blue ones and orange ones. Good. Very easy to wear hat that I'm going to give away to somebody. Don't know who. I finished that Tino sweater as well, that blue one, in the Jody Long Alba, and I can't show it to you because I gave it away to my mum, and she's been wearing it. She said she really liked it, which is unusual because she doesn't normally go for my hand knits. She usually doesn't like the colours I make things in. She does like this jumper. Although I'm sitting here looking at myself in the viewfinder, and I feel like I look like this huge big red jumper with this tiny head sticking out of it. So I don't know, I don't think I will wear it down today. Now, socks. I did make a second 3D sock. So now I've got two 3D socks. But you might remember that I said my first 3D sock was really too big. So I made the second one on a lower, lesser number of stitches. So I don't really have a pair of socks. I've got two socks that are different sizes. I don't know. Now I have to choose which size to make a third sock in. I've got the yarn probably. I've got enough yarn left from these socks. Got this much of this one and this much of the purple. I think if I make the sock purple and the 3D motif yellow, then there'll be enough for at least one more sock. I'd be lucky to get two pairs. Maybe I will. Don't stop it. Don't fight. The cast on of this sock is interesting. I used a double Latvian cast on for this one, and you can really see it. It looks good. I've never used that cast on before. Can you see the way that cast on is? It's a long tail cast on, but you use a double yarn. You hold the yarn double, and I think you go in one way to start with, and then the second way you go in and pull it out again. Anyway, it looks nice. I like it. These are cute. Has not ignited a love for sock knitting again, that's for sure. And also hasn't ignited a love for sock knitting in colour work. I did do a better job on the second sock though of the boomerang heel. Let me show you. The first one, I'd never done a boomerang heel before and it was a bit dodgy. Second one, much nicer. Right, boomerang socks finished. Now, my next project that I really want to cast on, or am going to definitely cast on, is Priscilla by Marzena Kolaczek. And I'm going to make Priscilla. It's a beautiful lace cardigan. Actually, it reminds me of the knits from Sezane. Hang on, I'll just get one. Do you mind? Right, thanks. There's the clothing brand Sezane from Paris are very well known for their very, very feminine lace cardigans and jumpers. Their knitwear is very famous, very, very popular on the social media sites, very popular on Pinterest. And I have a Sezane cardigan that I bought a couple of years ago, and I do wear it a lot. It's very beautiful. It's got a lovely lily of the valley kind of lace pattern that's very similar when you look at it to those patterns that are on the Japanese stitch dictionaries. And it's also very similar to the kind of pattern that Sari Nordland uses on vest that I knit recently. And this one's unusual because the band is crocheted, so it has an added crocheted edge. But these Marzena Kolaczek patterns, they really remind me of these Sezane knitwear, and so I've been excited to make this Priscilla cardigan. And it's funny, I don't know if you feel this way, but I often it's so strange, I often kind of sabotage myself by delaying the gratification of casting on what I really want to knit. I often think, oh, if I finish that, then I can cast on my favourite things. Like it's like when you're a kid and you eat everything you don't like on the plate. If you grew up in a house where you had to eat everything on the plate, it's like when you ate everything you didn't like to save your favourite till last. I kind of do that a little bit in my knitting. I save my favourite till last, and I don't know why I do that, because really your time for knitting is finite, isn't it? You can't just say, oh, I'll knit that in the future, I'll knit that in the future, because knitting takes a long time. So yeah, I don't know why I do that. But I'm going to knit the Marzena Kolaczek Priscilla cardigan next. Once this Levitate wrap's done, which won't take long, this stays in the naughty corner for a little while, and this is going to be next. So I went to New Zealand a couple of months ago. My husband's company that he works for is actually based in New Zealand. Oh, I don't know. They're in Sydney, but they're also in New Zealand, and he spends a bit of time there. In Auckland, and a couple of months ago I went to Auckland for the weekend to visit him. Anyway, it was good. Yeah, we went to a shop in Auckland called the Ribbon Rose. It was a beautiful shop, it was huge. Anyway, they had a full range of petite knit Sunday from Sezane. I was excited to see these petite knit ones because I'd never seen this yarn before. And I bought petite knit Sunday in this strawberry pink colour and the matching tin silk mohair in this strawberry pink colour. So that is what I'm going to make the Marzena Kolaczek Priscilla from, and that's going to be my next cast on. Excuse me. So that's it, finished objects, works in progress, new cast ons. Oh yeah. On Thursday night, 2 nights ago, today's Saturday, on Thursday night I went to a workshop by Mary Jane Mucklestone in Skein Sisters in Sydney, and that was great. She was a wonderful, generous teacher. The knowledge of Shetland techniques and the Shetland Islands and Shetland yarns and the historical context of the Shetland knitting experience throughout history just pours out of her, and it was a really entertaining evening. I came away with something, a theory about colour selection in Fair Isle knitting. Here's my theory. My theory is this: that selecting colours for your colour work, anything, be it knitting or painting or any kind of creative self-expression is talent, not skill. Because she showed us a theory that that you can see when you look up colour, you know, Fair Isle colour theory. I've got a book, the Alistair Moore book of Fair Isle knitting. This book is probably the definitive book on Fair Isle knitting. It's funny because it does talk about, it busts some myths about colour work knitting. Mary Jane Mucklestone did sort of the same thing. For a start, they don't catch floats in Fair Isle knitting. They just leave them. And they tend not to have long distances between their motifs because they, as she said, it was a brutal life, Fair Isle knitters. They weren't necessarily paid in money, and their primary goal was efficiency and yarn conservation. So anything that involved catching a float or making a steek, for example, which used yarn that they could otherwise be using to make a garment that was going to provide their family with some kind of resource, was, you know, not something, they weren't going to waste it. Oh, did I just kick a dog? Probably. Anyway, so that was interesting. And the other thing that was interesting was her, Mary Jane Mucklestone's assertion, and it's probably right that, well, I'm sure it is right, given that she's an expert, is that she prefers things to be knitted from the bottom up. Certainly in the Shetland way, everything would have been knitted from the bottom up because the V's of a knit stitch sit like this. And even though they sit like this next to each other, so technically the V goes up and then it goes down, the stitch itself, the V, has got the join at the bottom. If you turn that upside down and have the V with the join at the top on the way down, which is anything knitted from the top down, that's the way that your V stitches would be orientated. They think looks ugly and they would pick it immediately. Which, interesting, right? But that's not my theory. My theory is this: colour selection, creating harmonious colour patterns, is a talent, not a skill. That is my hot take for the day. What I mean by that is that you know, we were given some tools and some tips on how you might select colours for your own colour work journeys or your own colour work garments. Things like put all your dark colours on one side, put all your light colours on the other side, line them up from dark to light on both sides. If you've got 3 of each, then, and they come from opposite sides of the colour wheel, then technically speaking, when you put it together, what you should get is a harmonious colour scheme that looks great as a Fair Isle pattern. But one thing I did notice is that I feel like I'm not very good at that. And the colours that I selected, I did put my lights to darks on both sides, put them together, didn't look any good. But around the class, there was such a range, of course, because everybody's different. There was such a range in colour selection and what people had chosen. But every now and again, there was one person who had just selected 6 colours that were just fantastic, that had a central line in it that really popped, or a particular colour that didn't necessarily look harmonious, and just really made it look amazing. And in that regard, I came away with the theory that said that it's a skill, and people like Alice Starmore, Mary Jane Mucklestone, Kate Davies, and a lot of the the really well-known and successful Fair Isle knitwear designers, they really have a talent for being able to select a range of harmonious colours, or a range of colours that look really good together, even though the theoretical colour selection is one way of doing it, but it doesn't always work. And sometimes it's the rogue colour, or the one that's completely outside the box, that gets put in and makes these patterns really sing. it was really quite interesting. I'll put some pictures up of what I mean, really, because I'm not explaining myself very well. But I really envy people who are able to put colours together in a really, you know, in a great way, because it's not a skill that, you know, I do know the theory, but it's not a talent that I have. If you guys have ever knitted anything in Fair Isle or in colour work that you are really proud of, or show it to me, or link it in the comments, because I'd really love to see them. Anyway, that's my theory. Colour work is a talent, not a skill. There you go. So that's it for this week. Thank you so much for watching. Duck down into the comments and introduce yourself. I'd love to know who's watching the podcast. I promise I'm going to come in and reply to every comment. Over the next couple of weeks, I've got a few things on the back burner. There's a knit along, there's a test knit, and I want to check in to see how I'm going with my winter knits. And I've got some plans for some future cast-ons as well. So once again, thanks so much for coming and hanging out with me today. Happy knitting, and I'll see you next time. Bye.